Brace yourself. Get it passed up anytime now. Collect yourself. Things will never be the same in a sad, sad world.
Sir, did you call me?
I did, yes. I'll fix it later, okay?
It's Ariana.
Okay, glad to have you with us. All right. So today's presentation, and really this will take several class periods, I call it the Weirdos of the Universe. Well, spoiler alert, that the weirdos of the universe are going to turn out to be you and me and all of us. There are several points in the next few days where we're going to encounter information, and my hope is that it's information that makes you stop for a moment and say, wow, that's pretty weird, and makes you experience a little bit of awe and wonder, which is going to be our bridge into philosophy, which we will launch into in a couple weeks when we start Sophie's World. So let's talk about the weirdos of the universe. To begin with, I need Soraya to come up here, please, for a moment. Have a seat. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Soraya. Soraya, say hello to the people at home.
Hi.
Okay. Now, I have written a story about Soraya, and I'm going to tell you that story now. Good news is you don't have to do anything, but just sit there and have a story be told about you. Soraya walked into the empty room, and she sat down in a chair. She breathed in, she breathed out. And in that first second, nothing happened. She breathed in, she breathed out, and in that second, nothing happened. She breathed in, she breathed out, and in that third second, nothing happened. Now, this story will continue like this for 700 pages till finally reaching this conclusion. She breathed in, she breathed out. For 6 weeks, nothing happened. Is this a good story? Is my story, Soraya? No, why not? She says it's boring. Do you guys agree? Is that a boring story? Ralph, you agree? It's a boring story? What makes it boring?
There's no action.
There's no action. Nothing happened. All right? For a story to be interesting, it has to start with something simple, but then get more complex. Things change and make the simple situation more complex. Well, our story was simple enough, right? The problem is not that we couldn't understand it. We understood the story. It just wasn't interesting because it started simple and stayed simple. Soraya sat down, nothing happened. And then nothing kept happening, and then nothing kept happening. That's not a good story. That's not good storytelling. Thank you, Soraya. You can back to your spot. Our life stories, that's how they work, and that's why they're interesting. We start simple and we get more complicated. The life of a newborn baby, super simple. He's asleep most of the time anyway. Wake up, eat, poop, cry, back to sleep. That's super simple. We may love babies and love to be around them, but it's not as if their day-to-day life stories are interesting. No, that's not why we love babies. Babies aren't interesting. No one's ever said, you know who I really got to, who you really got to talk to? You know who you really got to talk to? This baby over here. This baby knows his stuff. No, babies aren't interesting. It's too simple. but life gets more complex as we progress. So as high school students, your lives are a lot more complex than they were when you were infants. Now, fast forward 10, 15 years in the future, many of you will be married. Many of you will be raising your own children. Uh, Hopefully, all of you will have careers. All of you will be paying your own bills. Well, your life is going to be even more complex then than it is as a high school student. That's just the way a life story works. It goes from simple and then it increases in complexity. The universe's story works the same way. Remember that circular, that picture with the circles that everyone loved so much, the scales of history? Well, one of the outer circles, big history, that's the academic discipline that looks at the story of the universe as a whole and then where we fit our story into that larger story. Remember, academic disciplines, what are those? Topics or areas of study. On the test, I still had people saying it's things like detentions and suspensions and stuff. No, the word means something different in this context. A discipline is a topic or area of study, and big history is the discipline that looks at the story of the whole universe. It's okay. Well, I'm glad you're here now, Brandonese. It's a fairly new discipline, by the way. It's not like math that's been around for thousands of years. Big history, that discipline is new enough that the educator who started it is still alive and not even super old. His name is David Christian. See, I'm citing my sources. And we're not going to see him today, but we are going to hear from him today. And the way he tells the big history story is he says history is about thresholds of increasing complexity. Let me show you a picture here. Not these pictures, this one. Hey, let me open it. This is a threshold, all right? It's the wood and the stone base that that supports a doorway. And we use that term, threshold, as a metaphor for when we make a big change in life. We call that crossing a threshold. So many of you are ninth graders, so you've crossed the threshold into high school when you started school this year. Nori's a senior. You're going to cross the threshold into college or whatever comes next when you graduate in a few months. Okay? So that term threshold, it's a metaphor. Crossing a threshold is making a big change. David Christian says that the big history story, the story of the whole universe, is a story of the universe crossing thresholds that take it from being super simple at the beginning, like somebody's got an open mic. I can't tell who. Why can't I tell who? Is it Enrique? Yeah. Okay. Thresholds that take it from being super simple to increasingly complex. So let's hear what he has to say. Let's let him introduce this idea to us. Thresholds of increasing complexity.
Eight dramatic transitions drive big history's 13.7 billion year story. We call these major thresholds of increasing complexity. They're times when the right ingredients combined with just the right conditions to enable the creation of an entirely new form of complexity. When our universe appeared, it was simple and, from our perspective, frankly, a bit boring. There were no stars, no planets, no life, and certainly no humans. And yet, look around, and you'll see amazing complexity. A sky filled with stars and galaxies in all stages of development. You'll see a solar system formed by the remnants of stars that were born and died billions of years ago. You'll see our own Earth filled with mountains and rivers, deep caverns and vast oceans, and incredible biodiversity. And you'll see our own innovative species with our computers, airplanes and skyscrapers, and our endless art and invention. 8 thresholds explain how a relatively simple universe transformed into the rich complexity that's all around us today. Each threshold builds upon the previous one. Together, they help explain where everything came from. They help explain our own place in the universe and where things may be heading. Today, much of the universe is still pretty simple, with large tracts of empty space. We'll see how complex things appeared in regions where the ingredients and the Goldilocks conditions were just right to cross new thresholds of complexity. Step by step, we'll see how new forms of complexity appeared, each with components and qualities that had never been seen before, leading to the world we live in today.
Okay, so let's follow him straight ahead into the first threshold. Threshold 1, the Big Bang.
Our first threshold is the Big Bang, which happened about 13.7 billion years ago and led to the creation of the entire universe. We don't know much about the ingredients and the Goldilocks conditions that led to this first threshold because we just don't have much evidence. For example, what made the Big Bang possible? We don't know. Why did the Big Bang happen? We can only speculate. Was there even space and time before the Big Bang? We don't know that either. What we do know is that the Big Bang provided the raw materials for everything around us today. After the Big Bang, there was space, which was rapidly expanding, and there was time. There was also matter and energy. At first, the universe was so hot that you couldn't tell the difference between matter and energy. But within the first billionth of a second after the Big Bang, matter and energy separated. Then, energy took different forms, including gravity and electromagnetism. And matter appeared in the form of electrons and quarks soon linked up to form protons and neutrons. Why is this so important? Because nothing had turned into something. And that something contained everything needed to build an interesting universe, one that could eventually include you and me.
I want you to make a mental note of something here. Something he just said. Now, look, I think David Christian's materials are excellent. Otherwise, I wouldn't bring them into my class. But he made one statement there at the end, or he made a little bit of a mistake. He said that in the Big Bang, nothing gave birth to something. That's not quite right. Big Bang doesn't start with nothing. Big Bang starts with very, very, very little. Okay, so you have what's called the primeval atom. Tiny, beyond the imagination how tiny this is. And everything in the universe now is contained in this tiny point. It's very small. It's not nothing. Big Bang isn't the transformation of nothing into something. It's a transformation of very little into a whole bunch. But that's a big difference. It's a big difference, which leads us to, see, he starts with threshold 1, the Big Bang, and that's a perfectly sensible place to start. But at that starting point, there's already something. I think we have to start earlier. It may not be meaningful to say earlier because time begins with the Big Bang, possibly. So we'll say logically prior. We need to start with nothing. So what did you talk about in class today? We talked about nothing, right? Nothing. This is the simplest circumstance imaginable. Nothing. It doesn't get any simpler than nothing. It's easy to explain. Why is there nothing on Honorella's head? Well, why would there be anything? Why is there nothing doesn't require an explanation. There just isn't anything. If nothing is so simple, nothing is what we should expect for there to be. Because it's so much easier for there to be nothing than for there to be something. Think about this. Here's a box in your house. There's a box. What's in this box? And I'm not asking you to talk about on the subatomic level or there's oxygen or there's photons, just the normal, ordinary way of speaking. Maria, what's in this box? Nothing. There's nothing in the box. So you leave the house. I guess you live alone in this scenario. Nobody comes over. Nothing happens. You come home a few hours later. What do you expect to be in the box now? Nothing. Right? No, he says nothing. Why? Because nothing happened. There's not, because isn't even a sensible question at this point. Because there's nothing simpler than nothing staying nothing. But actually you come home and this is in the box. The psycho clown jumps out at you. When the psycho clown jumps out at you, what do you want to know? Where did it come from? How did it happen? Why is there a clown in my perfectly good box of nothing? Threshold infinity, I'll call it. Before we can talk about threshold 1, the Big Bang, which was something that banged very bigly, we need threshold infinity. The fact, the weird and amazing fact that there is something rather than nothing. That there is something rather than nothing. I call this threshold infinity. Well, how do we even explore this? How do we even talk about this? Well, let's say we wanted to talk about threshold 1, the Big Bang. So we would turn to some different disciplines. All right. So let's say we turn to the discipline of dentistry. We know what dentistry is, right? It's the science of healthy teeth. What does the discipline of dentistry have to tell us about threshold 1, about the Big Bang? What would you learn about the Big Bang by studying dentistry? What do you think? Anybody at home? What could you learn about the Big Bang from studying about dentistry? Somebody at home, take a stab.
Well, because technically we were made from stardust. So by learning about dentistry, we actually know a bit of the material that is used.
Okay. So you're overthinking it, but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. So if you wanted to understand the Big Bang itself, studying dentistry would teach you nothing useful. It could teach you what Daniel had to say. But, well, at least part of what bung so bigly had the potential to turn into teeth. Okay, it teaches you that, but that's not useful for understanding the Big Bang. Nothing useful is the answer. Same with if you turn to political science. What's that going to teach you about the Big Bang? Nothing useful. If you turn to video game design, that's a real discipline. You can major in that in some colleges. Not going to teach you anything useful about threshold 1, the Big Bang. Where do you turn? Well, you turn to cosmology, mathematics, and especially physics. Physics is the golden child when it comes to understanding the Big Bang. You want to understand something, you got to turn to the right discipline. Okay? In physics, well, that's the study of what stuff is like, how stuff works, and what it does. It implies that there is already stuff. If you want to explain why there is anything, cosmology, mathematics, and physics are not your main sources any more than dentistry, video game design. For that, we turn to metaphysics. Metaphysics. Meta, that prefix, means above or before. So this is what comes before physics or is above or greater than physics. And it's a discipline that studies being itself. El estudio del ser mismo. Metaphysics. What does metaphysics ask? Questions like this. What is existence? ¿Qué es la existencia? Why is there something rather than nothing? ¿Por qué hay algo en vez de nada? Has there always been something? ¿Siempre ha habido algo? How did that clown get in the dang box? ¿Cómo entró ese payaso en ese caja? That's metaphysics. Okay. We'll spend time with metaphysics in a few weeks, but I wanted to introduce it to you. That's threshold infinity, that there is something rather than nothing. The first thing that should make us pause and say, you know what, that's weird. That's kind of amazing. Because it's so much easier, simpler for Saraya to just sit in the chair and do nothing than for her to do something. When I was in high school, President of the United States was Bill Clinton. He got in some legal trouble. He was impeached. He had to give sworn testimony on videotape. We call that a deposition. Well, President Clinton had a nickname. His nickname was Slick Willie. He was a very smooth talker and could sort of dodge and wiggle out of he wasn't sorry, it dropped me for a second. And President Clinton wasn't alone in that. Many politicians are like that. Well, when he was being deposed, being questioned by the prosecutor on tape, rather than answer one question, he responded like this. He said, well, that depends on what your definition of is. And the world's been making fun of him for 25 years because of this, except for the metaphysicians of the world. Those of us who study metaphysics know that this is actually, of course, accidentally from President Clinton. He didn't mean to say something profoundly true, but it's actually the most important question, the most basic question of all. What is the meaning of is? What does it mean to be? Physics tells us how stuff works. Metaphysics explores, asks, why is there any? Then comes threshold one. Threshold one, the Big Bang, about 13.7 or 13.8 years ago. Let me shut off the PowerPoint for a second and illustrate this for you myself. Okay, so this is what it's like. Let me grab a piece of paper and I'll do this illustration for you. All right. What we have here is Nazar's face. I've drawn Nazar's face. Now, if the universe were Nazar's face, then when it started out before the Big Bang, when it was something called the primeval atom, it would be like taking Nazar's face and doing this. All right. So now we got Nazar's face, all the same stuff, but it is smaller and more densely compressed. But now imagine I'm not Mr. Childers, I'm the Incredible Hulk. If I were the Hulk, I could keep, the harder I squeeze this, the smaller it gets, but I run out of strength. If I were the Hulk, I could keep squeezing it down, smaller and smaller and smaller, denser and denser and denser. Now imagine I'm not the Hulk, I'm a billion Hulks. Well, a billion Hulks could crush it down even smaller and even denser. If the universe were Nazar's face here, we start out in this primeval atom. Everything is still there, but it is tinier than we can imagine, denser than we can imagine, infinitesimally small and dense. And then, for reasons that are still being explored and there's no definite explanation, at least yet, it bangs bigly. We live, so Nazar's face blows up, and then we get the universe. We live in an explosion, an ongoing explosion, because the universe is expanding. We are still being thrown out from ground zero of the Big Bang. That's how they figured it out in the first place. Okay? So, if Nazar's face were the universe, starts out like this, and then explodes, and the universe we live in is what happens when Nazar's face explodes. You want to keep your face for the souvenir? Okay. Now, let's meet the scientist who came up with this theory. This is Georges Lemaitre. If I have native French speakers, Saray, you speak French? Okay, how badly did I butcher that name? Pretty bad? Yeah, the Saray is laughing at me just the same way the Spanish speakers have been laughing at me all period. But I tried. He's from Belgium, speaks French. He's an astronomer, a physicist, a mathematician, and a priest who first proposed the Big Bang Theory. He proposes this in the 1920s. Un astronomo fisico matematico y sacerdote belga propuso por primera vez la teoría del Big Bang. He comes to this theory by reasoning with the laws and principles of math and physics. And people react differently to his theory. Because though it's based on reason, people's initial response is, yeah, but where's the evidence? Where's the evidence for this? You're talking about something that happened, what, billions of years ago? How would you ever get evidence for that? You'd almost need a time machine. But it turns out we almost have a time machine. If you've been in a car, just about every car's got an almost time machine sticking up. It's the radio antenna that reaches up into space and pulls down these radio waves that travel through space. So now we're going to meet the two scientists who found the evidence for the Big Bang. So I feel like I've accomplished something great when I open up a box of Cheez-Its and I can eat the whole dang box in a single sitting. Like I've really done something meaningful when I do that. Imagine being the guys that found the evidence for the Big Bang. Talk about an accomplishment, and realize that this revolutionary, world-changing idea is a pretty new idea. The scientist who came up with the theory, Lemaitre, he was operating only 100 years ago, and the people that found the evidence are still alive. This is an amazing age that we live in of change, there's a Big Bang of knowledge, similar to the way there was a Big Bang of stuff at the beginning. Okay, today we're talking about the weirdos of the universe. Today we've met threshold infinity, the idea that there is something rather than nothing, which is what metaphysics explores, which should make us say, wow, it is weird. We are weird because we exist. Because most things don't. Most things you could think of in your mind don't exist. Picture an elephant. Okay, there's elephants. Now it's pink. Those don't exist. Now it flies. Those don't exist. Now it breathes fire. Those don't exist. Now it has landed and is teaching your humanities class. Those don't exist. Most things aren't real. Most things don't exist. Right? So that anything exists and that you're one of those things makes you say, wow, that's weird. Most people? What's the one true thing you can say about most people? that they're dead. Most people are dead, but you're still here. Should make you say, wow, it's amazing not only that I ever exist, but that I exist right now. Because most people don't anymore. Right? And then we met the threshold one. Surely not your first time talking Big Bang. Surely not won't be your most in-depth because this isn't science class. Lots more thresholds. Lots more things to make us go, wow. We're the weirdos of the universe in the 2 or 3 classes to come. But that's enough for today. So folks who are online, stick around. I'm going to run through attendance one more time to make sure everyone gets credit. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Yesterday we began our presentation called The Weirdos of the Universe, in which the weirdos of the universe are you and me. What this is this is a super duper fast cruise through the discipline of big history. Big history is the story of the whole universe, told in a way that takes the story of Klaus and of Matthew and of Hallie and of Juan and puts it in the context of the whole universe. Now, well, the reason I say we're doing this super, super fast is we're going to spend like 4 or 5 days on this, and people take an entire course on big history or devote their entire lives, if you're somebody like David Christian or Bob Bain, to big history. We're spending just a few days. Big history divides the universe's story into what's called thresholds of increasing complexity. These are these turning points, these moments in time where it's as if the universe steps through a door into a new reality as it moves from super duper 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 simple, almost as simple as you can get, to incredibly complex. And it's the complex things that make it interesting. Okay, and the universe's story is very interesting. Threshold one for David Christian, the educator that founded this discipline, is the Big Bang, and it's a perfectly sensible place to start. Hard to get much earlier than that. But remember, we did say that for us, threshold one is not going to be the starting point. That we're going to start with what I call threshold infinity. See, the Big Bang starts with something. It's not much. And sometimes you'll hear people, even David Christian said, in the Big Bang, nothing gave birth to something. That's not quite right. The Big Bang starts with very, 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 very little. But that's still something. Threshold infinity is where we reflected on the fact, the amazing fact, the mind-blowing fact that there is something rather than nothing, which should make us say, wow, that's weird, because we should expect there to be nothing, because nothing is easier. Nothing is simpler. If I say, Hallie, why is nothing kicking you in the face? You'd be like, well, of course nothing's kicking me in the face. Why should something be kicking me in the face? If I say, Hallie, why is something kicking me in the face? Yeah, I want to know why too. Something demands an explanation, not nothing. But we don't have nothing. We don't have the simple option. We have something. And that's what I called threshold infinity. The discipline that explores somethingness or being itself, we said, is metaphysics. Meta, that prefix means before or above. The self of existence itself. We'll spend more time with metaphysics when we meet Plato and Aristotle in a few weeks. Then we got to threshold one. Then we got to the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years ago, the starting point for everything else that came after it in the universe, perhaps even the starting point for space-time itself. We met this gentleman, the scientist who first proposed the Big Bang theory in the 1920s, and then we met the 2 Bell Labs scientists who found the evidence for the Big Bang through the radio waves that could be picked up and listened to even today. So we listened to the beginning of time. It was because of this video we watched. This is how I got copyright blocked by YouTube. So in conclusion, I would just like to say thanks for nothing, the Big Bang. Now we move on. Yeah, Matthew, got a question?
I meant like I wasn't sure if you picked up.
Oh, so Matthew was asking if Matthew missed class yesterday, and so he wants to know if I'll show him the video. Yeah, not right now. We're going to move forward, but this is 6th period, so there will be extra time. So and it's only a 4-minute video. So I will play it for you after I finish the main class. We are going to move super fast through thresholds 2, 3, and 4. Faster than they deserve, because I want to get us to the human beings part of the story. We won't get there till next week, but we're going to fast forward through 2, 3, and 4. But we'll mention them. Threshold 2 is that the stars light up. Las estrellas se iluminan. 13.6 billion years ago, we get the first stars in the universe. And everything that comes after the first stars is totally dependent on the stars for their existence. So this is a major threshold. Lights up 13 years ago. Okay, so it's 1 to 200 million years into the universe's life. Threshold 3, and guess who forgot to make a nice slide for threshold 3? Oops. So threshold 3 is that we have new chemical elements. What does that mean? Well, we actually have talked about this, just not in this language. The Big Bang produces helium and hydrogen, 2 simplest elements. Right? Everything else comes later. Everything else is forged in the heart of stars, and that we've talked about. All right, the center of the star is so hot, so much is going on, so dynamic that the helium and hydrogen atoms are being broken apart, and the protons, the electrons are being rearranged into new stuff. Look around you. Everything you see that's not helium or hydrogen comes out of the hearts of these stars, including you. Okay? Now, you ever take a helium balloon and you open it up, you breathe it in, and then your voice is real high for a minute or two? Well, you're breathing in the oldest stuff in the universe, because the helium comes from the Big Bang itself. Everything else, cooked in the heart of stars. Those stars die, they explode, and it pukes all these elements out into the universe, and some of them become other stars, some become planets, and some become Aaron. Okay? But we talked about that in the Stardust project. Threshold 4, the sun is formed, say forma el sol, and really this threshold is about the whole solar system, so maybe not on the same day, but about the same time, the earth is formed, say forma la tierra. The earth is formed as part of the same process behind the formation of the sun. It's kind of the earth is the sun's deleted scenes, the stuff that didn't make the cut. Okay? Now, threshold 5. So we just, by the way, thresholds 2, 3, and 4 that we spent like 4 minutes on is most of the history of the universe. We are past the universe's halfway point when this happens. Okay, so everything on Earth happens in the butt half of the universe, not the top half of the universe. But threshold 5 is where it gets really interesting. Threshold 5, and I'm gonna give you a 10-minute break from listening to me talk, not an actual 10-minute break, but a 10-minute break from listening to me talk, because we're going to hear about threshold 5 from Dr. Christian himself. And threshold 5 is the emergence of life on Earth. Hey guys at home, did I share sound?
Yeah.
Okay. Back to it.
Everything we've looked at has one quality in common. It's not alive. Now, and for the rest of this course, we're going to be looking at things that are alive, at living organisms. Biologists suspect that the universe is crawling with life, that there's life all through the universe, but the truth is we just don't know. The only place we know for sure that life exists is here on our Earth. So that's where we have to study it. Now, what is life? What makes life so distinctive? We all probably feel intuitively that we know what makes, but pinning it down precisely is actually very difficult indeed. Let's try a kind of crude comparison. Let's compare two big things. Let's compare an elephant and the Earth. Now, we could say the elephant moves, but we've seen that the Earth is kind of dynamic too. Or we could say the elephant grows. Well, even the young Earth sort of grew during the process of accretion. Or perhaps we could say that the elephant, like all living things, acts with a sort of purpose. Here I suspect we're getting nearer to the truth, but it's still hard to pin down for certain. What we can do is we can list some qualities that all living things seem to have. And in what follows, I'm going to describe 4 key qualities that all living things seem to possess. The first quality we call metabolism. All living organisms are made from cells. All cells can metabolize. And what we mean by that is that they can take in energy and materials from the outside in order to maintain themselves and keep themselves going. Now, this complicated process is governed by instructions that are contained in the master molecule DNA, that's deoxyribonucleic acid, that is present in all cells. The second quality we call homeostasis. It's a complicated word, but it's worth getting on top of. By homeostasis, we mean the ability of all cells, and in fact all living organisms, to keep constantly adjusting to tiny changes in their environment using the energy and materials they get through metabolism. And homeostasis is also governed ultimately by instructions that you can find in the DNA. The third crucial quality is reproduction. However good they are at homeostasis, eventually all cells, all living organisms break down and die. But it's here that life's come up with a really clever trick for preserving itself. Even when the individual dies, before it dies, it can make copies of itself and its DNA and scatter those copies around it. So the individual may die, but the copies will survive. And that's reproduction. The fourth quality we call adaptation. Over many generations, species can slowly change and adapt and diversify as environments change. The way they do this is actually strangely through mistakes in the copying of DNA. Just occasionally, DNA makes mistakes, but the copy works. And when that happens, and you get a new version that can actually do all these things, it can metabolize, it can do homeostasis, it can reproduce, we say that a new species has been created. It's almost as if DNA was slowly learning how to make new species that can do new things in new environments. And that's how we get the huge diversity of life all around us today. Metabolism, homeostasis, reproduction, and adaptation seem to reinforce each other. They sort of go together. Metabolism provides the constant of homeostasis and also for reproduction. What adaptation does is allow species to make large adaptations, large changes over time as environments change. And that's the key to evolution. Homeostasis and adaptation together explain why life always seems purposeful, because it's as if it's pushing back somehow against the environment. Now, as far as we know, only living things are capable of combining all of these 4 qualities. So what is it that holds them together, that links them? The answer is the astonishing molecule that we call DNA. You've seen already that DNA seems to play a crucial role in all the 4 qualities that we suggested may define life. How does it work? And how is it formed? Well, the best way of thinking about DNA is to think of it as being a bit like the software in your computer. DNA contains the instructions needed to make the proteins that go into the cell and do the crucial work needed to keep the cell going. And it also contains the information needed for DNA to reproduce and for the whole cell to reproduce. How's it constructed and how does it work? Well, DNA is a vast molecule with billions of atoms in it. And they're organized in two great chains. Each chain has arms, and those arms link up to form like the rungs of a ladder. So the whole thing ends up looking like a ladder. Then it twists on itself to form a double helix, and that folds up compactly at the center of the cell. This is how it works. The information is contained on the arms of the ladder in a special 4-letter code. Molecules inside the cell approach the DNA, unzip the crucial part, read off the code, and then go back into the cell and make the proteins necessary to do what the DNA needs it to do. DNA can also copy itself. This is how that works. The two parts of the ladder separate, and each of the arms goes off into the sludge of chemicals around it and finds its counterpart until eventually you have two identical double strands of DNA. And that's how DNA copies itself, and that's the basis of reproduction in all living organisms. DNA is at the center of our modern understanding of how life works. But even in the 19th century, the English naturalist Charles Darwin had generated a broad understanding of how these changes occur, of how life evolves. Before Darwin's time, most that were fixed. They didn't have time. But some had studied fossils, and that seemed to mean that species actually did change over time. The question was, how? That was the question that Darwin tried to tackle. Now, Darwin knew that animal breeders can actually change species quite quickly within just a few generations. And the way they do it is by choosing which individuals will breed and which won't. So if you want to breed fat sheep, you let the fat sheep breed and you don't let the thin sheep breed. And by doing that, quite quickly, you can really change an animal or a species. Now, what Darwin noticed is that something very similar seems to happen in the natural world. It's almost as if nature itself selects which individuals will breed and which won't. Think, for example, of an eagle. Think of an eagle with really good eyesight. It's going to get plenty of food, it's going to reproduce. And think of another eagle that has very poor eyesight. It's going to really struggle, and its chances of reproducing are rather poor. So what this means is that the eagle with really good eyesight is likely to have many more offspring, and slowly over time, its qualities will become more and more common, and that particular group of birds is going to change and become more like the eagle with good eyesight. Now, repeated many, many times over thousands or millions of generations, this Darwin realized is the mechanism that changes life. Nature is selecting which individuals will breed. He called this mechanism natural selection. And he figured out that it's the key to the evolution of life. Evolution, it turns out, is a never-ending process because the environment keeps changing, so species keep changing. There's no end to it at all. Now, when Darwin first came out with his theory, it was received with considerable skepticism in 19th century Britain. He actually came up with lots of evidence, but not quite enough. And some things he really didn't understand. For example, he hadn't a clue about the role of DNA. But since then, a lot of new evidence has come to make his theory much, much more powerful. Until today, it's the dominant idea in modern biology. Now, we encourage you to study the evidence. First, look at the evidence available to Darwin, and the best way of doing that is to read his wonderful book, The Origin of Species. It's very readable. It's really worth looking at. And then look at the evidence that's kicked in since then. Now, it's really worth doing this because Darwin's idea and coupled with our modern ideas about how DNA works, are really the key to understanding life and how it works.
So there's David Christian with his take on what life is. Let's spend a few minutes talking through some of this. Let me share my own presentation with you again. This is here. All right, so the fifth threshold is the formation of life on Earth. Las primeras formas de vida, 3.7 billion years ago. Of course, the first life on Earth is very simple, single-celled organisms. But even that is an amazing new development in the universe, at least the known universe. Is the Earth the first or the only place where there's life? We don't know. But whenever life first formed, whether it was here or elsewhere, it's something brand new, something exciting, something amazing. The universe is full of piles of stuff. Piles of stuff laying around, piles of stuff floating around. With life, all of a sudden, one of those piles of stuff started making copies of itself. And that's pretty weird. We're weirdos for being alive because most things aren't. We're built up. I keep hammer this home. We did the Stardust Project. We're built of the same stuff as everything else in the universe. Same elements as the dirt and the rocks and the chairs. And not yet, okay? But we're alive and they're not. You're alive and they're not. And that should make you say, wow. That should make you say, that is awesome. And should make you ask,
am I alive?
What do we do? Is that Andre's asking if you're alive? Yes, you're alive.
Yeah. How do I know that?
How do you know that you're alive? Well, you take your pulse. Now, we're going to get into some of those questions of how do you know what's real or not, and the really mind-blowing questions. But, I mean, you've been growing for, what are you, 17, Andres?
Yeah.
17? Yeah, so you've been at it for 17 years. But you look a lot different than you did 17 years ago, I'd imagine. And welcome, Lance. I'm just seeing your message, but I'm glad you're here. So your cells keep dying and they keep being replaced because life does this. Life self-replicates. Autoreplicaciones de la vida. Life copies itself, which is amazing. If you came in here and you saw two of my desks stacked up on top of each other and you came back the next day and there's a little baby desk on the ground next to those two desks, your mind would be blown. But
I would scream.
Living things do that. Living things reproduce themselves and they pass on information because our cells are full of information. A single cell, whether it be a cell in your body or a single-celled amoeba or a bacteria cell, has 2.9 gigabytes worth of information if we could convert the formats. All right. Now, I've got a really nice-looking copy of the new Star Wars movie on my hard drive. I'll get you in a second. On my hard drive. And it's about that size. All right. That much information in a single cell. Or if we could transform the the DNA coding, the adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine, just to the letters, you'd print it out, it'd be 1.5 million pages. Yes, Matthew?
For the same size, how powerful are computers? Same size of a cell.
So a full computer? Are you asking how much?
Same size. Like if you were to take the part of the computer, the hard drive, the size of a cell, how much would it store compared to the cell?
Oh, wow. That's an amazing question. I don't know. That's we can look that up in a little bit if somebody's run that calculation. I didn't, but
I find that interesting, though.
What's up, Andres?
I find that question interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? Okay, we'll look it up. Matthew, look it up. Yeah, I trust you. You're paying attention out of half your ear while you're looking it up. Matthew's looking it up for us. La información en una sola celda es igual a actually, I don't know how to say that. How would you say 2.9 in Spanish?
Punto,
And
2.9.
2.9. That's what I would have said. I have no idea how to say gigabytes. So we'll just cancel the Spanish on this sentence.
It's gigas.
Gigas, okay. O 1.5 millones de páginas. Talking about a big question. Big question when it comes to life. Is anyone out there? The rest of the universe? Are we alone, or is there life in other places? I know you don't know. Nobody knows. What do you think? Nobody in the room wants to think anything. Alana, what do you think? Are we by ourselves in the universe, or is there life out there?
Both.
Both. We're both. There's both not, and there is.
By yourself, and you could be with people.
Oh, Alana's writing poetry with every word she speaks. You can be surrounded by people and still be all alone. That's so true. That's so true. Rodrigo, what do you think? Is there other life in the universe? He's shaking his head. Yes. Come over here and shake your head into the microphone. I'm kidding. Anybody at home say anything? No, that's okay. We'll come back to it. So gather your thoughts. We'll come back to it. All right. You don't have to answer this now, but tomorrow there's going to be a new writing reflection assignment, and you'll have the choice of 2 questions, and one of them will be this. Of course, it's your opinion. All right. So you're not going to have the solution, or if you do, you'll be the most famous scientist in the world, and you'll be teaching me, not vice versa. So I know it'll be your opinion, but what I'll be looking for is your reasoning process. What do you count as reason or evidence for your opinion? And then you'll be asked to explain why someone might disagree with you, and not say because they're stupid or because they're evil. The universe is a big place, huge place. Our galaxy alone has billions of stars in it, and there are billions of galaxies. So there's lots of room. Whether that room is taken up by other living things, I have my opinion, but I don't have any secret inside knowledge. There's not like a secret cult of social studies teachers where we get all the true hidden truths of society and we keep them from you. If I knew, I would tell you. What is it like? What is it like to be a rock? What is it like to be a rock? What do you think? Who do I got on here? On my call here. Somebody at home. What do you think it's like to be a rock? Oh, Gabriel says Rocky. Okay. And see, that wasn't. Go for it.
It must be terrible to be a rock. Imagine if you're a rock in the road and some kid decides to keep kicking you like the entire way that they're going back home or something.
Sure. So you have no, you're totally at the mercy of the people around you, or of everything. You can't defend yourself. You can't protect yourself. Yeah.
But also you can't feel.
So
wouldn't that be a problem?
Yeah. So Andres pointed out you can't feel, so maybe it wouldn't be so bad. And Javon says you can't move, so he's got that that frustration. It's like Jack Squat. Jack Squat just means nothing, and you see how I'm trying to connect to the youth of America with this. The screenshot of a Saturday Night Live skit from 1993. Hello, fellow kids. But it's like nothing. It's like nothing to be a rock, because rocks don't have phones in their hands. They have that in common with Rodrigo. And they don't have conscious awareness. They don't have minds. They don't have experience. So it's not like anything to be a rock, at least as far as all the evidence points, with an asterisk. There is a philosophical theory called panpsychism, which suggests that it's possible that there is consciousness throughout everything in the universe, or even in the universe as a whole. But I got to be honest with you, and that it's a very metaphysical idea, and metaphysics is religion without the revelation. So yeah, but evidence-wise, it's not produced the kind of evidence that would compel science to agree with it, although it's not as absurd as it sounds in a 30-second description, but that's about the strongest endorsement I can give. So we're going to go with common sense and with the scientific consensus and say it's not like anything to be a rock. Rocks don't have experience, which is what makes this part of the threshold so awesome. What I'm calling threshold 5.2, that's when animals evolve. The word animal comes from the Latin word anima, which means soul. And when animals evolve, los animales evolucionan, animals bring with them something new in the universe, and that's conscious experience. La experiencia consciente aparece en la tierra when animals evolve. So the universe is full of stuff like rocks, just laying there or floating there. Then all of a sudden, though it's not all of a sudden, it's very gradual over billions of years, but all of a sudden that stuff wakes up and now that stuff knows things. That's animals. That's what we animals, the animal kingdom, brings. Now, I want to be clear. All life has some form of consciousness. Even bacteria and plants have a very simple, basic form of consciousness, but it's so simple, so basic that it's nothing we would recognize as being aware. A dog, on the other hand, doesn't think the way we do, but it thinks in a way that we can recognize as thoughts. It's aware in a way that we can recognize as awareness. A dog knows that it's bright or dark, hot or cold. A dog knows if he's hungry or thirsty. A dog doesn't know that he knows that it's hot, but he knows it's hot. The dog doesn't have that metacognition, thinking about thought. That's for us only in the known universe. Yes, Matthew.
You actually just refuted what I was sort of going to say in a way. So,
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay. Always love refuting Matthew. Kitten. All right. Dogs, giraffes, llamas, tigers, cockroaches even. Animals are the evolution of animals brings something new to the universe, and that's consciousness, conscious awareness, which raises, this will be the last couple of minutes worth of stuff we talk about today. Yeah, 4 or 5 minutes, but still, we're nearing the end of what we need to accomplish today. But consciousness brings with it some really tricky questions. The trickiest is what we call the mind-body problem, el problema de la mente y el cuerpo, which asks, is consciousness a thing? ¿Es la conciencia una cosa? And is the mind just the brain? ¿Es la mente solo el cerebro? See, it feels like to most people, it feels like my conscious mind, my awareness, is a real thing, and it's also pretty much identical with me. That I am a non-physical but real being that lives in here, kind of behind the eyes is where it feels like I am. And I look out from behind my eyes and I drive this body around. And unfortunately, I can't trade it in for a new make or model. So as the years go by, it gets fatter, it gets hairier, it gets older, and eventually it will fall apart. And then who knows? But it's not me, because I'm not it. I'm in it. That's what it feels like. The mind-body problem asks, is that true? Is your conscious mind a really existing non-physical thing? Or is your mind just your brain? Neuroscientists, biologists, philosophers debate. Neurocientíficos, biólogos, filósofos debatan. Is consciousness a real but non-physical thing, or just a description of the activity of physical stuff? ¿Es la conciencia una cosa real pero no física, o simplemente una descripción de la actividad física? Is the mind real, or is it an illusion? Well, mind-body dualists are people who approach the question and they say, yes, consciousness is a real, non-physical thing. And I've got that word spiritual in parentheses, which is a tough word to define, but I think the most basic definition of it would be something that's real, but not physical. is what is meant by the word spiritual. And whether any such thing exists is a separate question, but when someone uses the word spiritual, they generally mean something that's real but non-physical. And a mind-body dualist says, yeah, the mind's not just the brain, not just the meat inside your head. All right, the physical stuff alone doesn't explain me. And the mind-body materialist says, shut up, yes it does. Says consciousness is an emergent property of matter, like your speed when you run. What does that mean? Imagine you're running a race. Me putting me back on the screen for them for a second. Imagine you're running a race. You showed up at the race and you've got a bag. All right, you pull out, you got your shoes in the bag, so you pull out the shoes, put them on. You've got the number you're going to wear in the race, so you pull that out of the bag and pull it on. You want to be fast, so you pull your speed out of the bag. No, that's not how that works, because speed is not a thing that actually exists. Speed describes the relationship between basically your feet and the ground. The stuff that exists in a race is I'm seeing some of these comments from before from Larissa. That's awesome. The stuff that actually exists in a race is your body and the ground and the force of gravity. Speed is an emergent property. It doesn't have an independent existence. So a mind-body materialist would say that your mind is the same thing. What exists is your brain and your nervous system. But this conscious experience, it's just vapor. It's not real. It just describes the processes that are going on in your entirely physical mind. Two very different answers, the dualism and the materialism. Matthew's got a question or comment.
So are you saying that the mind-body materialists believe that consciousness is a creation of matter, not an experience aside from matter?
Thinking about the way you phrased that.
So the heat and the light from the sun comes from the sun exploding. So that's a creation of the sun, not its own aspect from the sun.
Okay, so they would say it's a creation of the matter. I don't think they deny that it's an experience, but they'd say that experience is not objectively real. That you're because here's what's at stake here, by the way. It's like, well, what the heck is he talking about? Emergent properties and the idea of the self being a real thing is what's at stake here. If the conscious mind is not a really existing thing, then neither am I. I'm just a series of systems of biological processes. All right. So there's a lot at stake with this question. We're not going in, by the way, we're almost done talking about it for weeks and weeks. So we're not going in super depth, but I bring it up because we're talking about consciousness and because your other option in tomorrow's writing, Simon, is going to answer this question. Are you your body or are you in your body? I know you don't know. If you did, you would revolutionize philosophy. If you had the answer that shut everybody up, you'd be teaching this class. Only this class would be going on at Harvard and not Four Corners. But I want to know what you think, and I want to know why. So again, I'll be looking for your reasoning process, what you're considering as reason and evidence, and how you're able to anticipate how someone might disagree with you. That will come up tomorrow. You'll see a description pop up on Schoology. I feel as if that is plenty for today. Let me quickly preview tomorrow. Tomorrow we will keep moving forward through thresholds. We won't have any Homo sapiens. Our species won't exist by tomorrow. They come up Monday, but we will have our genus in existence by tomorrow. So look forward to that. And some people will inevitably giggle about the name of our genus. So we have that to look forward to tomorrow. Aaron's getting a head start on it. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Let's go ahead and come together for a few minutes. This won't be an incredibly long presentation. We're at the tail end of the first half of the Weirdos of the Universe. Just a few last details we need to talk about. But let's welcome Jadiel. Glad you made it. Let's all let's all come together though. So we'll lose the phones, we'll turn off the music, we'll close the computers and all that good stuff, and talk together for just a few minutes. You'll have a lot of free time today. Where we left off yesterday in our cruise through big history and our cruise through identifying the weirdos of the universe, which is us. And for those who weren't here yesterday, you're going to be kind of lost, and I'm sorry about that. I will have videos up this weekend for the classes that you missed. I'm delayed in doing that because of the copyright infringement fiasco, so it's taken me longer to edit them. So some of the stuff, especially when we get into today's assignment, folks who were out skipping and partying with Whittleys here are going to be like, what is he talking about? You'll see the videos this weekend and it'll make more sense. But this is where we left off. Animals appear on the earth, bringing with them something new and something exciting, and that is conscious experience, awareness, thought. The animal kingdom is a very, very, very broad category. Sure, it includes us and dogs, but it includes worms and dinosaurs and goldfish too. All right, so it's not a very narrow category. It's pretty much any creature that reproduces sexually is an animal. So we're not here yet. Animals appear, that's a long way from us showing up. We pop in at the end of this story. So let's narrow the category down a little bit. Threshold 5.3, our phylum. So animal is our kingdom. Our phylum, the next level, is chordates. And chordates evolve around 540 million years ago. A narrower category than animal, but still a pretty wide category, because look at the creatures in those pictures. They don't have a ton in common, right? And what do we have in common with them? Well, not a lot, but a few things. Be a chordate, well, you got to have a spinal cord, or the earlier version of what evolved into a spinal cord. This is how far back this goes. Gill slits to breathe with. You're like, wait a minute, I don't have gills. Like, well, you kind of did as an embryo, and then your throat grew over them, and they grew into part of your throat. So that's part of what makes someone a chordate. And even this, now I make no bones about it, I'm not a zoologist, I'm not a biologist, so I don't really understand why this is such a significant detail, but one of the criteria to be a chordate is that it's creatures who, when we're embryos, it turns out we grow rear ends before we grow mouths. And for reasons that they didn't teach me in getting my philosophy degree and not taking biology, that's significant enough to be a major identifier of our phylum, chordates. Now we're getting closer, threshold 5.4, mammals. That's our class, los mamíferos. The mammals evolved about 210 million years ago. We're still a long way away, but you can see it's creatures that have a little bit more in common with us than whatever this duder-looking thing is, okay? Elephants, zebras, mice. All right, mammals, us. But again, we come in toward the tail end. So we're not around 210 million years ago, but our fellow mammals begin. What sets mammals apart from other animals? Mammals give live birth instead of laying eggs. And somebody in the last class was, what about platypuses? And I'm like, well, this is the weirdos of the universe. And if we want to talk weirdos, platypus is certainly a weirdo. But as a rule, mammals give live birth instead of laying eggs. And mammal mothers feed their young with milk, two of the hallmarks of what it means to be a mammal. That's threshold 5.4. 5.5, we get even closer, 55 million years ago, our order evolves, and that's the order of primates. So we've gone from kingdom to phylum to class, to order. The order of primates appears 55 million years ago. That's all of the monkey-looking stuff. That's your official non-biologist, non-zoologist definition of primates. We're part of this large order, very diverse order, you know, between this little dude over here and Rodrigo. You know, there's a lot of differences between the two, but they both belong to this order, the order of primates. Here we get even closer, 6 million years ago. So notice there are primates for 49 million years before our family. That's even narrower than order. Our family, the hominids, evolve. Number of species under that umbrella of hominids, including us. But the first appears 6 million years ago. Still a ways to go for us, though. 2.5 million years ago, our genus evolves, and that's the genus Homo. Now, Homo is not our species. It's our genus. So as a genus, it has a number of species. There are at least 9 Homo species that have walked the earth, although we are the last one left. Right? And we're also the last one to appear. Our genus evolves about 2.5 million years ago, but our species, as we'll find out next week, isn't really around till about 250,000 years ago. So only a tenth of this time has included us, although we're the last ones left. Now, why is this the name of our genus? Why is our genus called Homo? Well, it's an example of what's called a false cognate. Do we know what a false cognate is? Is that a term we're familiar with?
Imposter.
Oh, Matthew, are you raising your hand?
Perception of something?
Okay. We could polish it into that. Do we know what a cognate is?
Similar words.
Yeah, so a cognate is when you have two words, or you have a word in two languages that is the same or similar. Okay, so the word no in English and Spanish and Italian is the same word. Okay, it's exactly the same. Or it can just be similar. So teléfono in Spanish and telephone in English. They're cognates. They're not identical, but you can tell it's the same word. Cognates are really important to students of language because they're like the first handholds where you can grab on and say, okay, I get this. I'm beginning to learn the language. They can be a salvation point to keep us from getting lost or buried alive in a new language. A false cognate is an imposter cognate. It's when it sounds like it's a cognate, but it's not. When two words in two languages sound alike, but it's a trick, it's an imposter, they don't mean the same thing. Just a few examples from Spanish and English. Actual in Spanish does not mean actual in English. Asistir and atender in Spanish, English just took those and flipped them backwards. And the Spanish is right and English is wrong on this count because they come from Latin words and we just reversed their meaning. Largo doesn't mean large, it means long. In Japanese, hi is yes. In English, hi is short for hello. They're not related. It's just a coincidence that they sound the same. So they're imposters, false cognates. Homo is a false cognate. Homo is the name of our genus because homo in Greek means or human. Right? So that's the name of our genus. Homo in Latin means same, and the two are not related. It's just a coincidence that they sound the same. Most of the time when we hear that term homo, it's from the Latin. Homogeneous, where it means that everything is the same. Homosexual means someone is sexually attracted to someone of the same sex. In both of those counts, homo is used the Latin Homo is used. In Homo sapiens, so our genus and our species, the genus Homo is Greek, meaning man or human. It's a false cognate, just a coincidence that this Homo sounds like this Homo. So our genus has been around 2.5 million years. Our species, about 250,000 years. Our species is one of at least 9 human species. So we're not the only species of humans that have lived, but we're the only ones left. And we're going to meet us, the real weirdos of the universe, next week. That's all for the Weirdos of the Universe presentation for this week. So let me take a couple minutes now and show you what our new assignment is. Share the internet.
Another one? Are you serious?
I am. It's almost as if it's
I want to
school.
quit this class.
It's almost as if it's school. Okay. It's called a WOTU or WOTU reflection. What the heck does that stand for? Just stands for Weirdos of the Universe, because this is the writing assignment that goes with this presentation. Yeah, if you weren't here yesterday, none of this makes any sense right now. Wait till you watch the video over the weekend. But for most of us who work, here's what you do. Choose one of the following questions. Question 1, is there life in the universe outside of Earth? Question 2, are you your body or are you inside your body? So the first question talks about whether we're alone in the universe. And the second question is about the mind-body problem. The question of whether I keep wanting to say meat and potatoes. The meat and potatoes in our heads, our brains, is the same thing as our mind, or if there is a non-physical but still real part of us, of ourselves. It's called the mind-body problem we talked about yesterday. Are you your body or are you inside your body? Choose one of them and answer the question in 3 to 5 paragraphs. Now, nobody knows the right answer, by the way. So I don't expect you to find and prove the answer to these questions. If you do, you'll be the most famous scholar of all time. And I will hand you the microphone and you will teach. You will teach me and I will be your student. So what you're giving is your opinion. Or if you read what I wrote, what you're giving is your opinion, because for some reason, everything I write looks like I typed it with my knees. But what you're giving is your opinion. What I'm looking for, what I'm grading for, is to see how you explain yourself. You give the reasons for what you believe. I want to see your thought process, what you consider to be good evidence and good reasoning. I also want you, don't skip this last line, explain the reasons why someone might disagree with you. That's super important. And the reason someone might disagree with you shouldn't be because they're an idiot. All right? I want us to develop our ability to have intellectual empathy, to put ourselves in the shoes and in the meat and potatoes of the mind of somebody who thinks differently than we do. Because all around we're surrounded by people doing the opposite of this. All around us, we're bombarded with voices saying that if you don't see the world exactly the way I do, you're stupid or you're a jerk or both. Well, that's not helpful because it's not true. And it's not helpful because it makes the world worse. It drives us further and further and further apart from each other. And that's not what we're about in here. We're about making the world better. So I want you to take some time in this assignment to put yourself in a very, by the way, very low risk or low stakes question. I mean, who cares whether Aaron and Klaus agree on whether there's aliens? But I want them to put themselves in each other's shoes. Okay. Now let me show you something that will help. This, if you've never before been on the materials page, this is the famous Quarter 2 Week 2 folder. This article, Are We Alone in the Universe? Probably not. Of course, you don't have to agree with that conclusion. But this article will help you if you're answering question 1. These articles, Mind-Body Debate and Biology of Awareness, will help you if you're answering question 2. Do you have to read them? No. Do you have to use them? No. But they're there to benefit you. They will help you if you do use them. Now, if you're writing and your answer is something like this, I think there's aliens because it would be awesome, but I don't know, like whatever, then you do want to read the articles because you want better reasoning than that. So you want to expose yourself to more well thought out ideas. But there is a resource for you if you choose to use it. Are there any questions specifically about the new assignment? Okay, because they may be complicated topics, but I don't think they're not complicated instructions. You might not know what you're going to say yet, but you know what's been asked of you, so that makes sense. While I still have you all together and still have the internet shared, let me show you something else. Let me get back to our page. So yesterday, get our page to load. Yesterday I made a post, first time using this language, a post that had bonus material in it. And that's something I'm going to keep doing from time to time. So when you see a post that begins with bonus material, that is not something you're required to do anything with. It's something that's there for your benefit if you choose to use it, if you find it helpful. In this case, it was those articles I just told you about, as well as a video of David Christian talking about how the Earth formed. If those are things you're interested in, those are things you want to look at more closely, then you can take advantage of this bonus material post. I'll be making another one here shortly. Today, I'll alert you to a couple things that will be in the bonus material post. This article, Quarter 2, Week 2, 9 Species of Human. If you're interested in exploring our genus, Homo, or what it means that we're one of many species of humans, only one left, but one of many, you can check out that article. You may find it interesting. I've also included the complete book, Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. This is a book that changed the world. This is where Charles Darwin, scientist and philosopher, introduced the world to the theory of evolution by natural selection. Now, I don't expect you to sit down and read this all the way through. This is 500 pages. No. But if you're interested, save it to your computer, and now you've got it. And flip through it and see if anything catches your eye, or use it to refer to later. It's really an important work in human history, and here you have it for free. So there you go. Okay, any questions, comments, concerns? Anything we all need to hear? Okay, folks, well, you know what comes next. What comes next is this. You're welcome to stay on and work with me sitting here so that you can ask questions, but at this point you are also free to log off of Teams and work independently if you would like. Hi, Gabriel, man, I can't get that sentence done before he's out the door. So for those like Gabriel who are hanging up on me now, thank you for joining us. Come on back tomorrow. You too, Ken.
Around a little bit, trying to make the pieces fit to a puzzle with a million missing pieces. When I'm feeling fine is when I discover that I'm afraid to blow my cover, and there's something very wrong with this. So sit back in your hole, or get back in your cave. If I'm going down, I'm taking someone with